We are 1 week away from the start of the NFL regular season, and I cannot wait, guys. Huge contest up top for the Thursday Showdown slate with Buffalo and the Rams. This one should be a good one. Two high-powered offenses, over 50, so should be a great showdown slate. I'm super excited to talk about it. I'm just super ready for NFL regular season to be here. But if you guys are a first-time viewer, welcome to my channel. My name is DK. I do cover content for Draftkings, for Prize Picks, NBA Top Shot. If you guys are looking for more in-depth content, you can check out my Patreon, linked down below. We had a phenomenal NFL preseason, which we'll go over here in 1 second. And the sponsor of today's video, guys, is Prize Picks. You can use my code DKDFS for a 100% match up to $100. Had a great NFL preseason on Prize Picks as well. So again, if you're a new user, make sure to use that code. I'll be tweeting out and making some videos with plays that I do like for the NFL. And then we have NBA right around the corner. So let's quickly go over how I did in the NFL preseason. So taking a look at DraftKings, had an over 100% ROI, making almost $4,000 profit. So no complaints there on the DraftKings side. And then over on Prize Picks, had a 70% ROI, $3,500 profit. So overall, a little over $7,000 I made in the NFL preseason. So we're looking to keep that rolling for the NFL regular season. Again, if you guys are looking for that more in-depth content, check out my Patreon, linked in the description. Okay, so let's get into the slate, guys. Buffalo and the LA Rams. So let's just go top to bottom, talk about the players I like. Now, here's what I'll say. Week 1, there's a lot of question marks, right, with a lot of these teams. So I will say you can take a stand, right? For example, maybe you think, I don't know, maybe you think Zach Moss is actually going to get more work than Devin Singletary, and you want to take that stand. You can do that, right? Rams, there's some uncertainty at the running back situation here. Maybe you think, oh, I actually think Kerwin Williams might get some backup running back run, right? So you can take stances like that because there's just a lot of unknowns for this showdown slate as well as the main slate. But yeah, let's start top to bottom. So Cooper Kupp is at the top at 12.4K. Obviously, you guys know what Cooper Kupp did last year. He had an absolutely amazing year. A guy that, consistently going to get double-digit targets. Probably going to get you somewhere in the range on average of like 7 to 9 catches a game. Again, this is a high total game. It's projected to be, again, high scoring. So there's not a lot of downside to say about Cooper Kupp other than he's expensive. You are going to have to pay a premium for him. Now, Allen Robinson now on this roster, how is that going to work? Is that going to maybe take away from Cooper Kupp a little bit? It could. But, yeah, Cooper Kupp still phenomenal play at the top if you can afford him. And then right below Kupp, you have both quarterbacks in Allen and Stafford. So Josh Allen, 12K, Stafford at 10.8. I do think Allen looks a little bit better. And the reason I say that is because of his rushing ability, right? Taking a look at his stats on the ground, he's a guy that can consistently get you, 40, 50, 60 yards in the ground. And that's a pretty big boost, right? That's like 4 to 6 points. If he runs one in, obviously that's another 6 points. So Josh Allen, I will say, probably provides a little bit of a higher floor than Stafford just because that rushing upside. But I think both quarterbacks look good. I just think Allen probably looks a little bit safer. Now, Stafford, he's been dealing with that, elbow. I think he's had like a shoulder too. From what I've been reading into it, looks like he'll be good to go for week 1. But obviously, we'll keep an eye on it. But yeah, Stafford, obviously, firmly in play as well. I will say probably doesn't have as high of a ceiling or floor as Josh Allen, but still a guy that can produce a lot of fantasy points in a game like this. Both quarterbacks look good. Again, Cooper Kupp, if you can afford him, looks good. Below that, we have Stefan Diggs, who kind of had a letdown year. I mean, people were expecting a lot more from Diggs. He had a couple of good games, right? He had 30 fantasy points here against the Jets, 23 here against the Titans. But with how high-powered the Bills' offense was, you would have thought Stefan Diggs would have had a much bigger year. Now, people are banking on him to kind of expand on that, right? To do better this year. I think it's definitely possible for being the number 1 wide receiver in this Bills offense. He is $9,000, so still not cheap, but you are getting him at what? over $3,000 discount off of Cooper Kupp. So I do have interest in Stefan Diggs. Obviously, again, you're going to have to make some tough choices with these wide receivers at the very top. But I do think it is a bit easier to get to Diggs, obviously, than it is Cooper Kupp. But if you're comfortable with enough of the really cheap plays on this slate, which we'll talk about, then obviously you can go up and spend up to Cooper Kupp, who I think has a bit of a higher floor. Now, Cam Akers at 8K, I kind of don't know what to do with him. He came back, obviously, late in the year last year. Didn't look as explosive. He is listed as the number 1 running back. Obviously, they have Darrell Henderson, too. We don't know exactly how this is going to work. Again, kind of in the playoffs, he was used at times as more of a bell cow back. Like he had 24 carries here against Tampa Bay. He can be used in the passing game. So I would say Akers is one that like I'm a little bit unsure of. I would put him more in that GPP category. Like how explosive is he going to look coming into an offseason? Again, he had that really bad injury the previous year, or 2 years ago. So I do have interest in Cam Akers. But I will say there's more risk with him as opposed to guys like Diggs or even Cooper Kupp, in my opinion. And then we have Gabe Davis, who, if you're on Twitter, I'm sure you've seen a ton of threads from the Twitter thread bros about Gabe Davis. But yeah, he is poised to have a breakout year, right? He was kind of buried on the depth chart last year as the number 4 guy. When there were injuries to the Bills wide receivers, he had a couple really good games. Obviously, that amazing game in Kansas City, we're in for 55 fantasy points. So 7.2K, you're getting about a 2K discount off of Stefan Diggs. I was looking at the player props for the Bills, and they had Diggs or did they take Gabe Davis off? Oh, there he is. So Gabe Davis was at 60. Him and Stefan Diggs are basically the same, and now Gabe Davis is 10 less receiving yards projected on Prize Picks than Stefan Diggs. So that is interesting, but. Gabe Davis, like I said, primed to have a breakout year as being the number 2 wide receiver in this offense. He showed what he can do when given the playing time. So he is definitely viable. Singletary is another one that I'm like a little bit unsure of. Early on in the year, it was kind of a running back by committee. Down the stretch, though, he was a guy that was used more exclusively as the RB1. They do have now Cook, though, on this team. So I expect Buffalo to use 3 running backs here, right? They have Cook, Moss, and Singletary. So that is the tricky part, is maybe it's 10 touches for Singletary and 5 for the other running backs. Or again, you can take a stand. Maybe you say, all right, you know what? I think Singletary is going to be by far the number 1 back on this team. I think I'm going to play him in the slate, which again, you can take that stance. But I think there's a little bit more uncertainty, especially with the Bills drafting James Cook. So again, more in that GPP category for me, just because I don't know exactly how the Bills are going to utilize their running backs. You have Dawson Knox at 6.8K, who was very consistent for the Bills last year. A guy that played a majority of the game. I think I saw he played 87% of the snaps throughout the year. So he's going to be on the field for a majority of the time. He's a decent pass catcher. Again, you're getting him at a discount off of some of the top end guys. I wouldn't say I love this price, but he's definitely a red zone target and a guy that can put up 20 plus fantasy points for you if he falls into the end zone. Now, Allen Robinson, I feel like will be a relatively popular play in the slate because 6.2K I think feels too cheap for him. He had a very down year in Chicago last year, very, very disappointing, but now he gets Matt Stafford as his quarterback and a pretty big boost from what. In training camp, everything we've heard is Allen Robinson is looking great. So 6.2K does feel too cheap for him, and I think he's going to have a nice bounce back year playing in this Rams offense. And then you have the backup quarterbacks, who obviously we're not going to get to unless maybe Stafford doesn't play. But again, I think he's full go. Tyler Higby, another one that should play majority of the game for the Rams, is relatively consistent. Again, you're getting him at like $1,000 discount off of Dawson Knox, so might be a little bit easier, honestly, to get to Higby than Knox, because I think it's like the Spider-Man GIF in my opinion. Like they're basically the same to me, so I think Higby might be a little bit easier to get to. Now, the Bills have Draftkings has Jameson Crowder at 5K. He right now is listed number 4 on the depth chart behind Isaiah McKenzie. All indications are Isaiah McKenzie is going to be starting slot wide receiver. Now, that doesn't mean that Crowder's not going to play, right? Because we saw the Bills last year. They would consistently run 4 or 5 wide receivers throughout the game, like play 4 and 5 wide receivers. So I still expect Jameson Crowder to play. but maybe not as much as McKenzie, and McKenzie is cheaper. So right now, I would say Crowder more of that contrarian option. Again, Henderson is listed as the number 2 running back for the Rams. If you think it's going to be more of a 50-50 split, you can obviously look to Henderson. But like I said, there's uncertainty, I will say, in both backfields here for the Rams and for the Bills. So if you have a very, very strong stance, then go for it. Now, here's one where we might get some value. Van Jefferson, he's been banged up. We're not sure if he's going to be available for week 1. So if he plays, he should be utilized as the number 3 wide receiver, which would make him a solid value play. He didn't have, like, an amazing year, but, like, he had a couple decent games. So he would be a solid value. If he misses, we'll talk about a couple value plays I think are relatively sneaky there for the Rams. Now we're getting to the pretty cheap options here. So we have both defenses. We have the Bills at 4-2, the Rams at 3-6. So with a total over 50, with both offenses being pretty high-powered, I'm not a huge fan of either defense. That doesn't mean they can't have a good game. If one of these defenses gets like a defensive touchdown or a punt return touchdown, they could very easily be in the winning lineup. But it's tougher for me to prioritize the defenses on a slate where there's projected to be a high-scoring game, right? And then both kickers, I think, are safe options, right, in Bass and Matt Gay. Again, they're going to be out there. They're going to have all the kicking duties, right? This isn't the preseason where we had to deal with, at times, 2 kickers. So both Bass and Gay, I think, are solid value plays. You know, can get you ceiling of like 10 to 15 fancy points. So I think they're both solid options there. Then we have both backup running backs here for the Bills with Zach Moss and James Cook. Again, they have Moss listed as the number 2 back, followed by, or James Cook, I should say, as the number 2 back, followed by Moss. James Cook is a decent pass catcher. So I think he probably would be the backup running back I would take a shot on over Moss. And again, if you take a look at the depth chart, they do have Cook number 2, Zach Moss number 3. So they're still viable, but I will say, again, I do prefer Cook to Moss. And then, so there's a lot of guys in the Showdown slate where they either got released or are on the practice squad. So Duke Johnson on the practice squad. Now, Isaiah McKenzie, so he had an undisclosed injury they said we'll see about his status for week 1. So that's something to keep an eye on. I looked on Twitter. He was practicing, but kind of off to the side. So this is pretty big news. If Isaiah McKenzie plays, I do think he makes for a pretty good value because he is projected to be their slot wide receiver. Now, if he misses, then obviously you would expect Jameson Crowder to fill in as that slot wide receiver, which would make him in play. However, Crowder a lot more expensive at $5K than McKenzie, only down here at 2.4. So definitely something to keep an eye on. Again, Blanton is no longer on the team for the Rams, so don't go there. Now, here's what I'm saying about Van Jefferson. If he misses, you can look to Ben Skoranek, but Skoranek not a super talented wide receiver. He's a solid blocking wide receiver. I will mention one sneaky play here for the Rams. This is like a dart throw, but Tutu Atwell. So he didn't play in the preseason because he was too good to play in the preseason for the Rams. But right now he's listed as the number 5 wide receiver on the depth chart. If Van Jefferson doesn't play, you could see some run here for Tutu, who is a speedster. They want to get the ball to him, and he can, make big plays in space. So, it's not something I can say with confidence, but I'm just going to mention that. I think he's sneaky if Van Jefferson doesn't play more in those large field tournaments. All right, what else? Again, Kerwin Williams right now is the number 3 back for the Rams, but if you think, I think Kerwin Williams is going to get some playing time in this game, sure, you can take a shot on him, but not something I feel good about. I think the Bills, they released O.J. Howard. Yeah, they did. So we don't have to go there. Tommy Sweeney is the backup for the Bills. I believe that listed as the backup tight end. Might play a little bit. Again, yeah, he's listed as the backup. You can use him as a dart throw in large field tournaments. And then Bryson Hopkins is the number 2 tight end for the Rams. The Rams only have 2 tight ends. Now, I'm not sure if he's going to play a ton, but maybe something happens to Higby, or maybe Hopkins, catches one ball and he falls in the end zone. So at the flat min price, yes, you can go there. And then it's kind of like number 5 wide receivers here, like Powell and Kumaro. McCutcheon made the roster. I think the Rams kept 8 wide receivers. I think they did. Let me see. Yeah, Kosi, McCutcheon, and Powell. They kept 8 wide receivers. So let's see. Was there anything else I wanted to mention here? Again, a lot of these guys did not make the team. No, I think that is it. So that is the Thursday Night Football show and say for you guys. Obviously, we'll keep an eye on some of these pieces of news, right? Make sure Stafford's good to go, but I think he will be. Van Jefferson, obviously, still something to keep an eye on, and Isaiah McKenzie could open up more value for these rosters. But yeah, guys, that'll wrap it up with the video. So again, if you have been enjoying the NFL content, just make sure to like, subscribe, hit the notification bell. Really do appreciate all your guys' support, and I will see you all in the next video.